I never see the lights out. They get me overdrive. Fancy on a fast car. This is how you make me feel. Don't stress me now. I got the overdose. I'm feeling it in my bones. And if you say that I'm lying to you, these habits are killing me. I wish I could fall asleep. The problem is you. Oh, I got the overdose. You are my overdose.
Hey guys, what do you guys think of the new intro? I spent almost all day working on that intro, so what do you guys think? For another thing, I would like to talk about what's going on with the Noah Presgrove case down there in Oklahoma. This 19-year-old young adult is not getting justice down there in Oklahoma. The local police officers are refusing to investigate it as a murder, even though the way he was found and the damage to his body was blunt force injuries. That's clear signs of murder. He had numerous broken ribs. He had several vertebrae that was snapped in half. He had a massive skull damage. His skull was actually split in two right in the middle. He had damage to his brain on the cerebellum and the temporal lobe. You know, it's just sad what's going on in these cases, especially with the Idaho 4 case. It's been almost 2 years. And Brian's still sitting in prison, still sitting in jail. And naturally, we also have the Delphi case. There's some updates that came out of the Delphi case. Richard Allen was granted to be transported to the local county jail instead of being held in that prison for all this time. His public defenders actually got him transferred from the prison to the jail. So maybe he can actually start gaining weight again. It's just sad in the Delphi case. It really is, guys. What they're doing to Richard Allen is a travesty, and they still have that case as unsolved. Even though they have Richard Allen in custody, they still have the case as unsolved. So if it's unsolved, then why keep Richard Allen? Answer me, guys. If it's an unsolved case, why keep Richard Allen locked up if they're not going to actually charge him with the murders of Abby and Libby, but yet rule it as unsolved? You know, just like in the Idaho 4 case, most of the evidence in the Idaho 4 case, guys, is not corroborated evidence. It's circumstantial evidence. They're holding Bryan Kohberger on circumstantial evidence. I don't know if they can get a conviction with circumstantial evidence. Maybe you guys out there can tell me in the chat, because I don't think he will get convicted with circumstantial evidence. They need actually a hard evidence, and they don't have hard evidence against Bryan Kohberger. All they have is circumstantial evidence, which is sad. This guy has been locked up for 2 years. Almost 2 years he's been behind bars, and all they have is circumstantial evidence. And they've got the court hearing coming up on the 29th of this month for, what is it, change of venue? Even though Bill Thompson doesn't want to change of venue, he actually came out with that motion to deny change of venue because he doesn't want the trial moved 300 miles away from Latah County because he believes Latah County can get a clean jury pool. I don't think Latah County can get a clean jury pool, especially there in Moscow, because of the U of I. I don't think they can get a clean jury pool there in Moscow because of the U of I. I honestly don't, guys. I don't think you can get a clean jury pool in Moscow. And then with Noah Pressgrove, the police down there in Comanche, Oklahoma are refusing, and I repeat, refusing to investigate his death as a murder. And they are refusing to search the house that he was last seen alive in. They will not go to that house. And apparently there was a 4-day house party going on, and Noah got into an argument about 3 a.m. that morning of September 4th, 2023. He got in an argument with a couple of young ladies because they thought he was standing too close to them. And an argument ensued, and then he was dead by the roadside by 5 a.m. on September 4th, 2023. And it just don't make no sense. None of these cases make sense. With the Noah Pressgrove case, and look at the Sebastian Rogers case. I'm praying, guys, that this Sebastian Rogers case doesn't turn into a Summer Wells case, because it's been 5 years and no sign of Summer Wells. And look at Sebastian Rogers. He's missing, and there's no sign of him for almost 6 months. Could the Sebastian Rogers case turn into a copycat Summer Wells case? Could we not know what happened to Sebastian for another 2, 3, 4, 5 years, just like the Summer Wells case? Could that happen in this case? I pray it don't. I want justice for Sebastian. I want justice, especially in the Summer Wells case. I know I haven't looked at that case, but I want justice in that case. Justice in the Idaho 4 case, the Delphi case, especially Noah Pressgrove, guys. Noah Pressgrove is not getting any justice at all in his case. It'll be a year this September 4th. And they haven't, all they're ruling it as is unknown or undetermined. We've got to do something about these cases, guys. We really do. We got to do something about Noah Pressgrove. Hey, Wolf Angel. Noah Pressgrove, guys, is 19. Found on the roadside dead, naked. A brutal blunt force trauma death. And they're saying it's not a murder. And how do you explain him having mismatched shoes on? One one shoe was Adidas, the other shoe was Hey Dudes. How do you explain that? How do you explain mismatched shoes on a naked dead body? If that doesn't scream foul play, I don't know what does. No, and Noah was 19, and he will now not live to see 20. And he's getting no justice in his case. The police won't investigate it as a murder. The OBI are investigating it. Let's hope they investigate it as a murder. But even his brother Dalen doesn't think he was murdered. But yet, all signs point to him being murdered. It really does. I mean, how do you explain it, guys? How do you explain him being found naked alongside the highway? His teeth were knocked out, and they were laying next to him. His skull was bashed in, and he had most of his ribs were broken. He had abrasions on his body. His spinal cord was severed in 2 places, but yet that's not a homicide. They're deeming it as unknown or undetermined or unsolved, a freak accident. How can that be a freak accident, guys? Really? How can that be a freak accident? And I heard something today, which I don't believe, that Bryan Kohberger allegedly was in contact with Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funk on their OnlyFans. Way before the unalivings. So, I don't know how much of that we can believe. But if that's true, guys, cross my fingers, if that's true, then DM and BF has a lot of explaining to do when it comes to that. They really, really do. I mean, what happens if that is true? What happens if it comes out that Bryan was in contact with DM and BF? That would be very huge, very, very huge in this case. It would implicate DM and BF. But like everyone's saying, the DM and BF wasn't involved in it. Am I right or am I wrong, guys? And let's go over Bryan's alibi. We know where he says he was, which I'm not knocking that.
Moscow Police Department joined forces with the Idaho State Police and the FBI, following every lead, every tip, and every piece of evidence. That investigation took them across the country to Pennsylvania and led them to this man, a grad student at a neighboring university in Pullman, Washington. This accused mass killer has denied the allegations and claims to have an alibi. Where was he? What was he doing? And who was he with? We'll search for answers as we investigate the Idaho student murders.
So, if someone's accused of a murder, and this is a horrific murder, your first defense and best defense is always going to be, well, it couldn't have been me because I was somewhere else. And in this case, they have a good window of time as to when they believe the murders took place. So what exactly is the accused killer's alibi? We took a closer look.
Get the support your business deserves. Between product knowledge and installation material expertise.
The alibi for the accused Idaho student's killer is that while 4 college students were murdered in the early morning hours, he was out for an innocent joyride. Defense attorneys called their client an avid runner and hiker, claiming he often took drives in the countryside late at night and in the early morning hours to enjoy the moon and stars. The accused killer's filing says that once school started, his hiking decreased and his drives increased. His attorneys plan to present cell phone data and photos of the night sky that show he was in the countryside on several occasions. The defense says their client's cell phone was south of Pullman, Washington, and west of Moscow, Idaho on November 13th, 2022. So they say the car captured on video along the Moscow-Pullman highway near Floyd's Cannabis Shop could not be his. Floyd's Cannabis Shop is off State Route 270, the main route into Moscow from Pullman, Washington. His alibi does not confirm or deny that other surveillance videos of the white Elantra in Moscow is him. Here's the state's timeline of the accused killer's movements, outlined in their probable cause affidavit. Prosecutors say his phone pings in Pullman, Washington at 2:42 a.m. at his Washington State University campus apartment. His phone is on the move at 2:44 a.m. A few minutes later, his cell phone stops pinging. Investigators say that could be because the accused killer turned it off. And for the next 2 hours, investigators track his alleged movements using only surveillance video of what they say is his white Elantra. The state alleges that the accused killer drove from the WSU campus to Moscow by way of State Route 270. A claim they support with surveillance of a white Elantra seen heading in the direction of the highway at 2:53 a.m. and a photo of the same car near Floyd's Cannabis Shop further down the highway. The accused killer claims that it was not him. Cameras caught a white Elantra traveling through Moscow, first on streets near the crime scene, then on the victim's street from 3:39 a.m. to 4:20 a.m. Police say the accused killer turned his phone back on at about 4:48 a.m. near Blaine, Idaho, a rural community in the countryside about 10 to 15 minutes south of Moscow. According to the prosecution, from 4:50 a.m. to 5:26 a.m., his phone travels south towards Genesee, Idaho, going west toward Uniontown, Washington, a route that could lead toward Hawaii Park. The accused killer claims that park was his favorite place and that in the early morning hours of November 13th, he drove there. His alibi does not say when he got home, but the state says at 5:30 a.m., his cell phone uses service in Pullman, Washington. According to prosecutors, that's when he got home, not after an innocent drive, but after committing a quadruple murder.
So that's the accused killer's alibi, but that brings me to our first question. Let's take a look. Does his alibi make any sense? Court TV producer Cody Thomas is on the case and joining us from Washington State. Cody, there you are. Let me ask you.
Just like he said, does it make any sense? I mean, they don't have his cell phone pings, and all they have is supposedly his car on video, which I don't think they actually caught his car on video.
Because it's very specific where he said he went. So my question to you is, does his alibi make any sense?
Well, Vinny, of course, it's up to the court to have a direct answer to that question. But I did go down to his favorite location, Hawaii County Park, and I also went at night to just kind of get a feel of the stargazing vibe that he was going for. It was a long drive. There was a lot of dirt road, several miles of dirt road to get there. Take a look at what this park would have looked like after dark at the entrance gate.
According to Bryan Kohberger's alibi, he says during the window of time that the murders occurred, he was out driving around simply stargazing, specifically ending up right here at what he calls one of his favorite parks in his alibi, Wawai County Park. Now, of course, there's nothing wrong with coming to a public park, doing what you want to do, stargazing included. That's what they're here for people's leisure in the community. But one caveat about this park in particular, it closes once the sun goes down. It doesn't reopen until 7 a.m. And if you pan over here to the left, it's gated, and that gate is closed. No cars coming in, no cars coming out. So according to Bryan Kohberger's alibi, he says he was here during the window of time that the murders occurred. Now, we know those murders occurred between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. Now, how is it that he could be out here at those times if this park is closed? Not to say his alibi is untruthful, but it does get a little muddy once you throw that crucial piece of information in here about Wawai County Park.
And again, Vinny, that park is about 30 minutes west of Pullman in the opposite direction of Moscow.
So what's the drive like to actually get to that gate? Like, where are you driving? What are you passing? What are you seeing?
I'm not seeing much of anything besides all of these wheat fields that you can see behind me. And at night, it was very dark, as you can see on your screen right there. And I was out there maybe around 9:30 to 10 o'clock. And you can see there aren't many cars out there. There's one passing right here, but maybe 3 out of that entire trip that I took. And once you get off this main road, you go down 7 to 8 miles of dirt and gravel road with fields on both sides and not much civilization at all. And in fact, at one point, my cell phone dropped signal. Luckily, I was paying attention and figured out how to get back. But after midnight, I don't imagine anyone could pick him up out there. And I find it weird that he was out there at that time in the first place, given what that drive was like.
Now, the darkness would work if you are going stargazing. When you were out in this area, were there any stars out?
Well, I was more so paying attention to the road, but the sky was very wide open, and I would say there's plenty of stars out. But again, I was trying to figure out where to go and make sure that I can make it back home. And
we got a great idea from the video of what we're talking about here. This is not an area where you're going to come across anyone else at 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, 3 a.m. It's just not going to happen. But are you passing any businesses? Are you passing any homes, any farms?
Benny, you're passing nothing but open fields without barns, without houses, and all essence of the phrase middle of nowhere. That's what this park felt like. I mean, you were just going and it was dark and I had my bright lights on. Then all of a sudden, up to the right, I saw the entrance gate and I was like, oh, there it is. But before that, you didn't see much of anything on this entire drive.
And I presume there was no one else at the park at that time.
Absolutely not. I was the only one going down that road around 9:30, 10 o'clock. I was the only one coming back off of it.
He also, I believe you said it was a place he would go to run or to hike. And obviously that's what this park is about, right? This is a place where you get in touch with nature. It's way off the beaten path. And I guess it's a place where you can kind of get away. But is it a place you think you'd have to know about to come across?
100% you'd have to know about it because, again, like I said, obviously I was on the main road right here in the clip that you're seeing. But once you get off that main road, close to 10 miles of gravel, no businesses, no buildings, maybe just a couple of power lines running out to maybe there was a building in the park. But again, that gate was closed, so I wasn't able to go in and see what was actually in there at night. But from what I could pick up, you would definitely have to know about it, probably if you were a local or have gone to school out here at WSU or the University of Idaho.
And his alibi is that he's by himself. And how did you feel driving in that area by yourself in the dark, Cody?
I felt like I wanted to get out of there immediately. Of course, I wanted to go see what it was like, try to get a feel of what he was talking about, get a feel of his alibi, see if the stargazing was true. But as soon as I saw what I needed to see, I was out of there ASAP.
All right, Cody Thomas on the case. Thanks so much, Cody. When we come back, we're going to talk about some video that is out on the internet. And the question is this video, is it his Elantra? And
And look what time it is, 4:07 and 41 seconds or so. I think he parked at 4:08, all right? And then at 4:08, probably exits the vehicle sometime after that. And then at 4:20, it leaves at a high rate of speed.
On the next episode of Accomplice to Murder.
The call came in as a boy not breathing.
Paul was the person who had been carrying out a lot of the punishments that Shonda had chosen to inflict upon Timothy.
At some point, were you instructed to do something with him because he wouldn't wake up? Put him in an ice bath. How does a 15-year-old child die as a result of malnutrition?
Accomplice to Murder with Vinnie Politan. Season finale Sunday night, 8/7 Central.
Only on Court TV.
Today.
So we are still looking for all pieces of evidence, but we are still looking for the weapon. And I will say that we have found an Elantra.
The Elantra, the white Elantra, perhaps the most crucial and important piece of evidence in this case in tracking down the suspected killer. They don't have the weapon, but they have this white Elantra. Now, the white Elantra is referenced in the arrest affidavit, and they connect it to the suspect, and it's referred to as the suspect vehicle in other parts of the affidavit. Let me read that to you because I think it's important. Videos obtained from the King Road neighborhood showed multiple sightings of suspect vehicle 1, the Elantra, starting at 3:29 a.m., ending at 4:20 a.m. So they have this window of time. Suspect vehicle 1 makes an initial 3 passes by the 1122 King Road residence and then leave via Walenta Drive. 1122 King, that is the crime scene. Suspect vehicle 1 can be seen entering the area a 4th time at approximately 4:04 a.m.
I don't think suspect vehicle 1 is Bryant's. I really don't. I mean, what do you guys think in chat?
It can be seen driving eastbound on King Road, stopping, turning around in front of 500 Queen Road, and then driving back westbound on King Road. When suspect vehicle 1 is in front of the King Road residence, it appeared to unsuccessfully attempt to park or turn around in the road. The vehicle then continued to the intersection of Queen and King, where it can be seen completing a 3-point turn and then driving eastbound again down Queen Road. Suspect vehicle 1 is next seen departing the area of King Road at approximately 4:20 at a high rate of speed. They are tracking this car via all this surveillance video. Now, there is some surveillance video that's circulating on the internet. This is a still frame from it. You look to the top of the frame, you see the little light there. What car is that? Whose car is that? And the question I have relative to that video is this his Elantra? Joining me to answer this question, host of Gray Hughes Investigates on YouTube. Gray Hughes is with us. Gray, thanks so much. I know that you have looked at this timeline, you have studied the evidence, you've studied the videos. Let me ask you the big question first of all. Is Elantra, in your opinion?
I would say 100%.
And why?
Why
do you say that? Why do you say 100%?
Well, if you look at it like this white Elantra is moving around and it matches exactly what law enforcement says in the probable cause document. And then the vehicle parks at 4:08 near the 1122 King Road residence. And then it leaves at a high rate of speed at 4:20. Inside of that 12 minutes, all 4 of the victims were murdered. And left at the scene was a knife sheath that had Brian Kohberger's DNA on it. So that DNA being on the knife sheath makes it absolutely certain in my mind that the white Elantra that was driving around, and by the way, missing a front license plate, as it drove by an A&W just before entering the area, it showed it was missing a front license plate. And in Pennsylvania, you don't need a front license plate, and his vehicle did not have one until he got new plates right after the murders. So there you go.
That's a huge fact.
Absolutely his.
That's a huge fact right there. So let's take a look at this video. Let's start at 3:31:02 a.m. Let's roll that video and you tell me what you're seeing.
Well, just after it passed the A&W, it enters the area at around 3:30, and then comes back around 500 Queen Road and does its first pass right there. It actually comes around and it goes right by 1122 King Road as it's making its pass around, and then it exits the area. And there might be some question now if it takes a right on Taylor Avenue or left, but it makes the same loop. But it might actually go right based on some audio evidence that's out there.
All right, let's move forward now. 3:38 and 53 seconds. What's happening now?
Well, at this point, it takes off, it leaves the area again, and then comes back and then enters for the second pass, and then goes right back behind 500 Queen Road again, and then goes back and does the same thing. I think each time he's driving by, he's checking on the status of the house. Don't you think that? Like he's looking to see if the lights are off?
Absolutely. The one thing about that house, depending upon where you are on that road, you get a really good view of the home and you can see which lights are on in which rooms. And if you're familiar at all with who is in what room, you'll have a good idea when it's a time to go good night. 3:50.
I don't think he was familiar with the inside of the house at all. Oh, yeah, I know, Heather, I know. I've never even heard of him until now. But, yeah, there ain't no way Brian knew the inside of the house.
6:45 seconds is the next piece of video here. What about this video?
Well, that one's interesting because he leaves for quite a bit longer. And there's actually some evidence that's come out recently that he was at that. There's a gas station footage that came out really early on at 3:45. And that likely is actually his vehicle driving quite a bit to the east away. And then he came back. And now he's making his third pass. And I think this is when he notices perhaps that the lights are off in Madison Mogen's room. I actually think Madison Mogen, I think she was the actual target in the room he was looking at when he was parked.
4:05.
So I think on each pass, yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm going to move ahead to 4:05 and 19 seconds. So 4:05, 19 seconds. What's going on now?
Yeah, like at 4:04, it enters the area again, and then 4:05, it comes back in this area, and then it turns around in front of 500 Queen Road, number 52. So right where you see it stop right there, it actually does a 3-point turn also. So it does 2 3-point turns here. So 4:05, it stops and turns around. Now, we don't know exactly why it's doing this. Did he notice something in the front? Because this is around the time that the Uber driver was in the area, right? So maybe he was checking to see what's going on with that. And then he drives, he stops, tries to turn around like you were saying. And then it takes off, and then it does a 3-point turn at Queen and King, probably right around like 4:07-ish, something like that. And then after it does the 3-point turn, it turns around and drives back again behind there. And I think you probably have that clip too, right?
Yeah, we have 4:07 and 21 seconds. Let's take a look at that clip.
Yeah, and so here it comes around for that last time, and it's really going quick. And I think he's made up his mind now. He's going to do what he's going to do. He's got to, he's seen that the lights are off. He knows her lights are off, and he's going to go and he parks the car. So look what time it is right now. It's 4:07, 45 seconds. He's probably going to park at 4:08. And then he gets out of the car and he goes into the house. And I believe he killed them all probably within like a 6 or 7 minute period inside that house. Now, a lot of people think that's not possible, but I've actually made some videos where you literally sit and wait in each of the rooms, and it's really a long time, like 7 minutes. If you just sit there and look at a clock and you have somebody that's in a frenzy, it's easily done. And you've seen other cases that are even worse.
Absolutely.
In a shorter amount of time.
And we understand there had to be at least some level of panic or something going on, because the knife sheath is gone and is left at the scene, becomes, as you pointed out, the most crucial piece of evidence directly linking him to the crime scene. So this didn't go 100% perhaps the way that it was planned, because you would never plan to leave that behind. Now, as we looked at this video, the one thing that is clear, and we have about 20 seconds here, the one thing that is clear, this video is in one location, but they've got camera and surveillance video, prosecutors do, in several locations.
Yeah, 112 King Road. So there's actually 1112 King Road. That's kitty corner there, has a great shot. I actually have a sample image from that house, and it's crystal clear. So when that car is coming around, they can tell it's an Elantra. So they were able to say it's an Elantra. There's a lot of people that say, oh, that's not an Elantra, but they've actually determined it was from that camera, and the one that goes behind there is a different camera. You can't really make it out great, but it fits exactly what the probable cause document said.
Gray Hughes investigates. Thanks so much. We'll keep digging for answers as the investigation continues. I'm Vinny Politan. As we continue our investigation into the Idaho student murders, as a former prosecutor, I'm always concerned about the lack of evidence. Jurors are demanding, and you've got to prove cases beyond any and all reasonable doubt. So you want as much evidence as possible. So what's happening here in the case of the Idaho student accused killer? It's not going to be the easiest case in the world. Here's more of the story.
4 students were brutally murdered in their home near the University of Idaho. Kaylee, Maddie, Ethan, and Xana were great people with amazing futures that were taken away by a monster. The man accused of this horrific crime has denied doing it and has proclaimed his innocence. There's no eyewitness, there's no confession, and there is no direct evidence. It's a case.
No eyewitness, no confession, no direct evidence. It's all circumstantial.
That the prosecution has built on circumstantial evidence which they believe is compelling. We'll take a closer look as we continue to investigate the Idaho student murders.
And there are a lot of ways that you attempt to gather the evidence in an investigation and in a case as you try to prosecute someone and build those pieces so you can tell the story and explain to the jury exactly what happened. Well, search warrants are one of the ways that you gather those pieces of evidence. Take a look at the search warrant affidavit from this case. Investigators located a tan leather knife sheath laying on the bed next to, it says Mogan's right side, but it's Maddie Mogan's right side. The sheath was later processed and had K-bar and USMC, United States Marine Corps, and an eagle globe and an anchor insignia stamped on the outside of it. So in the search warrant, they say, yeah, we found a knife sheath, which brings me to my next question. And this is a very important question, which is, where's the knife? Where is the...
Exactly. Where is the knife? Where's the knife? They have the knife sheath, allegedly. Where is the knife?
The murder weapon. Because in a case where you don't have a murder weapon, what's issue 1 for the defense? Ladies and gentlemen, they don't even have a murder weapon. So let's bring in Court TV producer Cody Thomas, joining us from Washington State tonight. Also with us, retired police commander, host of the Profiling Evil podcast, Mike King is here. Cody, let me begin with you. Where is the knife? Where could the knife possibly be?
Well, Vinny, the first part of that question, we have to remember that the drive from Moscow to Pullman is only about 15 to 20 minutes tops if you go directly to between each city. According to the probable cause affidavit, Koberger's phone pings on a drive that's well over that, maybe about 45 to 50 minutes, an elongated road home. And I took that drive, and I could probably pick out 100 different places you could hide a knife, especially after midnight. Take a look at this drive.
So we are back here on the University of Idaho's campus here in Moscow, in the neighborhood of the King Road house where the crimes took place. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take the drive that police believe Bryan Kohberger took after he committed the crimes that night. Now, remember, he lives in Pullman, Washington, only about a 15 to 20 minute drive away from here in Moscow on SR 270. But his cell phone pings that night place it a little out of the way of what would have been a routine drive on SR 270. So what we're going to do now is hit some of those key locations listed in the probable cause affidavit and see what that drive would have looked like that night. Now, according to police in that probable cause affidavit, King Road neighborhood here at the intersection of Conestoga Street and Palouse River Drive. As you can see, a very wide open. Now, remember, during the window of the murders, Bryan Kohberger's phone did not ping on any local towers. You know, some police believe that he could have had it turned off, it could have been on airplane mode, but it was not pinging on any towers nonetheless. But around 4:48 a.m., it pinged going down this road, Highway 95, going towards Blaine, Idaho. Now, this is south of Moscow and about 32 to 35 minutes away from his apartment in Pullman, and also going in the opposite direction. Now, as we continue down Highway 95 south, the probable cause affidavit says he goes through Blaine, Idaho, and then continues into Genesee, Idaho. That's where his phone was consistent with pinging off of the local towers. And you can see that this is wide open road, plenty of field on both sides of the road. And also to note, no cameras, no street lights, no nothing to pick anything up out here as far as cars going down the road. But I do see a couple cell towers on top of some of these hills as we continue to go. According to the probable cause affidavit, after passing through Genesee, Idaho, he then headed west towards Uniontown, Washington. We are right now. You can see over here, no surveillance camera. Was not relying on surveillance per se just yet, but more so on his son out in this area. And keep in mind, we are still over a half hour away of what should have been just a 15 to 20 minute drive from Moscow back to his apartment in Pullman. I just wanted to stop and show you the lay of the land out here. We're headed from Genesee to Uniontown, Washington, where some of his phone pings were picking up on the way back to Pullman. Now, as you can see, this is a dirt road. Now, a single car, for as far as you can see, in either direction. And no surveillance cameras, no streets, ample meters. We do not have a murder weapon case. We don't know where he ditched it, but out here among all this land could definitely be a possibility, especially around 4 a.m. Perhaps the murder weapon could be somewhere out here along with some of those bloody clothes if he allegedly committed these crimes. We have now, after making that long loop of a drive, we've arrived back to Pullman, Washington on the Washington State University campus. We are now on Stadium Way. This is one of the main strips on campus. It's also one of the main roads mentioned in that probable cause affidavit. It's one of the roads where they say at many intersections, cameras picked up Kohberger's white Elantra as he arrived back here after 5 a.m., somewhere around 5:25, 5:27 a.m. As you can see, it's very busy around here with students walking around on the sidewalks. And we're coming up on one of these intersections here now. So let's see if we see any cameras. And I see 1, 2, 3, I count 4 cameras at this one intersection on each of these traffic posts. Now another intersection right here. There's one camera right up ahead. You can see it standing vertically off of that post, and the one to the left also has a camera on it. So no doubt that some of these cameras, if not all, caught Kohberger in that white Elantra after 5 a.m. I'm coming back from Moscow, Idaho. And here we are now, finally arriving back to those Steptoe Village University housing apartments where Bryan Kohberger, the alleged suspect in the Idaho student murders, this is where he lived at the time in November of 2022. What was supposed to be a 15 to 20 minute drive turned into about a 50-minute to an hour long drive on all that barren land, that wide open road space. We know the basis of this investigation was a combination of his cell phone pings along with surveillance footage of that white Elantra, but it all ultimately allowed for police to lock Bryan Kohberger down as a primary suspect back here at the Steptoe Village Apartments, where it all began on Washington State University's campus. Now, of course, Vinny, there's no official definitive answer outlined as to why he took the long way home. Perhaps it may coincide with his stargazing alibi, but as for now, we'll have to wait and see.
Mike King, where's the knife? Where's that knife?
Cody did a great job of describing how vast that countryside is there, Vinny. And you know what? I suspect that knife wasn't just disposed of in a really erratic manner once Kohberger, if in fact he's responsible for this, realized that he left the sheath behind. Because that all of a sudden upped the ante on the value of that knife if they were ever to recover it. You can't even find a body in that many square hundreds of miles out there, let alone finding a small knife that probably now is under dirt. It's probably been turned over by a farmer somewhere in a field, and we may never see that thing.
The other part, the clothing, Mike, what are your thoughts there? Like the knife, a little bit smaller, clothing, a little bit more difficult to get rid of potentially. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think what we see, if this is the responsible guy, we see that there was a great amount of organization before the homicides occurred. And so, and what generally happens with an inexperienced criminal is that as soon as they break out into the crime spree that they're going through, everything that they planned for goes out the window and they become disorganized. But the idea that he may have pre-configured how he was going to dispose of the clothing. We know there were clothing changes, that it's pretty reasonable, I think, to just theorize that he already had a dumping spot figured out for that, whether it was a dumpster or multiple dumpsters, because we know he's gone east of the residence, he's living west of the residence, he's traveling through all kinds of countryside to the south. And like we've seen in other homicides, Vinny, some suspects in the cases throw pieces out in different locations to try to make it a lot harder. And as they spread that out, it's less noticeable to somebody passing by. A little piece of sock in one garbage can and a sock 5 miles away in another could completely throw people off and never raise this thing to the level of suspicion.
All right. And again, this is some of the evidence that isn't there that worries me as a former prosecutor. Mike King staying with us, Cody Thomas staying with us there. Next question. What was he doing after sunrise?
Surveillance camera inside the grocery store shows Kohberger going inside and buying some unknown items before coming back out and leaving.
One of the most successful true TV.
He was going to the grocery store. What's so suspicious about going to the grocery store?
Determined the cause and manner of death as a homicide by stabbing, and determined that it was likely all 4 victims who were asleep during the attack.
Now, we all know that they all were not asleep. Xana was awake and on TikTok. Plus, she got a DoorDash. She wasn't asleep. Xana's Jack in the Box DoorDash was sitting in there in the kitchen on the counter. So when Dylan stated that she heard Gonzalez say, "There's someone here," that might not have been Gonzalez, because Brett Payne already stated in the PCA that could have been Xana, because Xana was waking on TikTok. She had a DoorDash order, and she could have been the one that looked over, saw that backsliding glass door open, He pinged on the tower at the grocery store.
Of the victims had defensive wounds, and each victim was stabbed multiple times.
So difficult to look at those photos of those young people taken at such an early age. It's incredibly sad, incredibly tragic. And
A very good question, Mary C. Did they ever even really search for any evidence anywhere out there? You would think if that's what they thought, then search teams would be searching for it. Very, very true, Mary C. Good question. And good comment. Thank you.
when the story first broke, one of the unusual facts that came out early on is when 911 was first called in this case. Because we know the murders are taking place like 4 o'clock in the morning. So when are they first noticed? I want you to take a listen to Captain Roger Lanier here from the Moscow Police Department and talking about the first call to police.
On the morning of November 13th at 11:58 a.m., a 911 call was placed to the Whitcomb Dispatch Center reporting an unconscious person. The call originated from inside the residence and was made from the phone of one of the surviving roommates. Moscow Police Department officers responded and located 4 victims, 2 on the 2nd floor and 2 on the 3rd floor.
So this is almost at noon before 911 is called. And there was a very strange fact in all of this. But now you look at the timeline. Okay, so we know the investigation begins at noon, but that brings me to my next question, which is about the accused killer. And what was he doing after sunrise? Where was he? Where did he go? What did he do? Let's bring back in Court TV producer Cody Thomas, who is in Pullman, Washington. So what did he do after sunrise, Cody?
Well, Vinny, he made a couple of stops later on that afternoon into the evening, the same day of the killings. He was even caught on camera at one of the locations in person. So there's no doubt about that he was there. But the thing about those locations is that they were almost an hour from Pullman and Moscow. Take a look.
So we're back here at the King Road location. You can see it right here behind me where those murders took place on November 13th, 2022. Now, what's interesting about that day, of course, you know the murders happened between 4 and 5 a.m., but around 9:36 a.m., a few hours after the murders, Bryan Kohberger's phone pings in the area yet again. Now, did he return to the crime scene? We don't know. That has yet to come out. We'll learn those details, of course, during the trial. But he also went to a few more out-of-the-way places of his apartment and this location about 45 minutes away. So we're going to go check some of those places out right now that he went that same day, later that afternoon, after 12:30, going into the evening around 5 p.m. So let's go check some of those places out. Now, according to the probable cause affidavit, surveillance video from this U.S. chef store here in Clarkston, Washington, picked up the white Elantra passing by this Kate's Cup of Joe espresso stand. It's also consistent with where his phone was pinging here in Clarkston at the time. It happened around 12:36, the same day of the murders, and he also showed up at a...
Okay, maybe he wanted to get a cup of coffee or a latte or something.
Another spot just up the road, also here in Clarkston, which is about 45 minutes away from his apartment and about 50 minutes away from the location on King Road where the murders took place.
Around 12:46, the same day of the killings, Kohberger's phone pings right here also in Clarkston near this Albertsons grocery store. And not only does his phone ping, surveillance camera inside the grocery store shows Kohberger going inside and buying some unknown items before coming back out and leaving. Again, this is in Clarkston, Washington, about 45 minutes away from Pullman, where Koberger lives, at this Albertsons grocery store. The last stop that Koberger's phone pings was back up in Johnson, Washington, about 36 minutes back up the road north toward Pullman. But the interesting thing about that, it pings around 5:30 p.m. the same day of the killings. But from 5:36 p.m. until 8:30 p.m., his phone stops pinging to the local towers, similarly to how it stopped pinging during the window of time that the murders occurred on the same day. Now, is that suspicious? That, of course, will be left up to the jury to decide during his trial.
And Vinny, one more tidbit about those locations. To get to them, you have to pass over the Snake River. The Snake River separates Idaho from Washington State on the state line. Perhaps that could be home to the murder weapon or those bloody clothes that we've been speaking about.
Yeah, I remember the Snake River Canyon from years ago. You're too young, Cody, but that's where Evel Knievel attempted one of his jumps. Mike King is still with us as well. Mike, what are your thoughts about what the accused killer is doing after sunrise? And let's start with going back towards the scene of the crime, because if he's back there at 9:30 in the morning, there's no police cars. There's no one there because 911 hasn't been called yet.
Exactly, Vinny. And this thing is really interesting when you look at it from the perspective of criminal behavior. If, in fact, this is a predator who has fantasized about committing these murders, planned them out, and then looks for the news to come out and validate his work, and nothing comes out, it's got to be incredibly frustrating, which then prompts him to come out of the lair and drive by the location to figure out, have they even discovered this thing has happened yet? And I think that's really what we're going to find in this trial that comes out clearly, is that drive-by was, number one, to validate that the police are either there or not there investigating it, and to reaffirm this monumental task that the predator feels they accomplished by killing these 4 kids. And it's really frustrating to think about it from that perspective. But then I think your questions are maybe going to go south of here, and I'll add on to that as we go forward.
Well, go ahead, Mike. I'm looking at a couple of the different stops here. You know, I understand the coffee. This could have been an all-nighter for him. Might be getting a little tired. Maybe some of the adrenaline is running out of his body at this moment, and you get a cup of Joe. But then the purchase at this Albertsons, I know there are supermarkets much closer to his home.
Exactly, Vinny. And you know what? I think it's going to be really interesting if law enforcement was able to collect a receipt from Kate's. I'd like to know if this guy got a double shot of caffeine on that cup of coffee, because if in fact it's him, he was up all night and he has to be pretty dang tired, regardless of how wired he is emotionally. And, you know, that could keep you going for a long time. But the other purpose of going south wasn't to get a cup of coffee. Albertsons might be just makes perfect sense. Maybe the guy was hungry by that time in the morning, or he needed to stop and use the restroom. 100 reasons that we could come up with why he needed to be in there. And I think that's going to come out if we actually get the full detail of the receipts of what was purchased there. But don't forget that the night before, or the hours before this, right after the murder, during that time when his phone is turned off, it's believed that he's making a couple of trips here and there. And then the phone comes on and we see him just north of that Lewiston location in 2 different places, that phone pinging. Again, the artist wants to see their artwork. And it might be that he's driving by those locations where he potentially dumped clothing or the knife, or he washed up afterward, and he wants to go by to make sure the law enforcement investigators aren't there, that he hasn't been burned in those specific locations. So it's the bear that's buried its prey going back to make sure that that site is still secure.
That makes so much sense. So much sense. Hey, Cody, I just want to make sure that I'm correct here, because I haven't been out there. You're on the ground. Albertsons, are there other grocery stores that are closer to his apartment than that one?
Without a doubt. There's Walmart's, there's a Publix, and there's even a Target right next to Washington State University. So there was absolutely no reason to be almost an hour away down in the Snake River Valley.
Yeah, all of this is incredibly suspicious. It's circumstantial. It's not direct pieces that
it's circumstance, not evidence. just like Vinny said, there is not direct evidence. It's all circumstantial evidence. So they want us to believe all this malarkey that Brian. Yes, a very good comment, David. If he was the real killer, he would assume that Ellie was called pretty soon, even though Ellie was not called until 8 hours. Yes, there is malarkey all around in this case.
I'm Vinny Politan, the subject of my investigation, the Idaho student murders. This is the biggest case that we are tracking. This case is about 4 awesome students.
Yes, exactly, Love Tina. Frozen shock phase. Don't play with me. Not when you are texting everyone what's going on and can't call 911. You are exactly right, Love Tina. I have good stores in my town, but I also like to drive 40 minutes away and a couple of towns over because they have more stores and better selections. Exactly. Exactly, Mary C. Okay, who is that, Justin? Is it good or bad, Justin?
Students who were taken from this earth by evil. That is the only way to describe what happened at the University of Idaho. Here's the story.
Ethan, Xana, Maddie, and Kaylee were 4 friends living their best lives. All students at the University of Idaho in Moscow, Idaho, a place with a reputation as being incredibly safe. But in the early morning hours of November 13th, 2022, following every lead, every tip, and every piece of them across the country, Pennsylvania, and at the University of Washington. This accused mass killer has denied the allegations and claims to have an alibi. In our investigation, we'll return to the scene of the crime. What does it look like now? We'll retrace the alleged route of the killer. How were investigators able to track him? We'll search for answers as we investigate the Idaho student murders.
So much of the coverage of this story has focused on that crime scene because of what happened there and what it was all about. It was about young people living their best lives inside this home together. Friends who were all doing the right thing and doing well in school, socially, academically, and setting themselves up for incredibly bright futures. But those futures were taken away. I want to show you a picture. This is from October of 2023. This was the scene. They had gone through, got all the evidence out, then they boarded it up and just wanted to keep people away from it. Such an important part of this case, this trial, and this investigation. But this was the last month or 2 months that this building was going to be in existence. There was this battle by the university to demolish that building, which brings me to my question. that I want to investigate tonight, which is very, very simply, what does that crime scene look like now? We haven't been there in a while. So joining us live from Moscow, Idaho, Court TV producer Cody Thomas is with us. Cody, great to see you tonight. You're out there in Moscow. And that question from me is very simple. What does that crime scene look like now?
Well, Vinny, of course, one of the first things you notice when you come here now, you can kind of see behind me, the house is no longer here. I know my face is a little cut off right now, but it's no longer here. And like you mentioned, it was demolished. There was some emotion surrounding that demolition because some of the parents felt that it was a critical piece of evidence. The university officials felt like it was the first step of healing. But regardless of that, I did take a look around the perimeter, making sense of what's left here of the property and also making sense of what could have happened the night that Bryan Kohberger allegedly went inside that property. Take a look.
We are here at that King Road location where Ethan Chapin, Maddie Mogan, Xana Kernodle, and Kaylee Gonsalves tragically lost their lives in November of 2022. And as you look behind me here, I'll step out of the frame a little bit. You can see that house is no longer here. They demolished it in December of 2023. There's still, though, memorials left out here, some stuffed animals, some flowers. Obviously, this community still really cares for these 4 young students. But regardless of this house being here now, we still want to give you a lay of the land of what is still here and what investigators have to go on as far as pinpointing where and how alleged suspect Bryan Kohberger got into the house in that early morning hour of November 13th, 2022. Of course, this is the space where the home would have been, in between these private residences and over to the left, these apartment buildings. Now, people who lived in this apartment building back then said it used to be pitch black all throughout this parking lot. As you can see, there's no street lights anywhere, but soon after those murders, this light bulb right here, people who lived at the residence say this light bulb was replaced to give it a little more illumination around this area. And of course, they still have it roped off. Not too long ago, all of this was sealed off by crime tape. And here's some of those memorials I was talking about. As you can see, flowers, stuffed animals. Put a little bit more in focus here, some candles. Looks like a framed picture right there. Obviously, these girls and Ethan were very much so cared for by the community. And you can see this fence going up the right of where the property would have been. Now, all of that is, of course, private property. We can't go up there. And likely that Bryan Kohberger could not have gone up there either if he did commit these crimes. But we want to take you up this hill right here to this back parking lot to where his car, that white Elantra that's reported on in the court documents, may have been parked that night. So as we stand here on this side hill, this side road that would have gone up the left side of that property, we can see that it's not really easily accessible by foot. I'll zoom in. Given the fact there's a pretty big drop off right here, it looks to be maybe 3 or 4 feet. You know, you could easily hurt yourself and get injured if you're trying to come off of that. And there are also these rusted, looks as if to be what used to be fence posts. Maybe there used to be a fence here to kind of, you know, keep it separated from this building that is over here behind me. But again, you can see not that accessible, at least by foot, definitely not by car on this side. And also as we stand here, you can tell that it's not that busy of a road. There's not a single car that's come by for the minutes I've been here so far. But at one point in time when the house was here, outside of these trees, it did provide a pretty clear look into the side windows of some of those bedrooms of the house, and even a peek into the kitchen on the second floor where the crimes allegedly happened. Up here is the back parking lot to those apartments. And as I pan to the left, you can see that it also leads right to where the back of the King Road house where the victims lived at the time. Now, of course, the leaves are a little grown up now, but in November when it was a little cold, the leaves were off the trees, provided a clear view right into the back windows of some of those bedrooms and a super clear view of the kitchen, those glass sliding doors leading to the second floor that could have provided access inside the house. Remember that police reported there was no signs of forced entry into the home once they arrived. And they also believe that this back lot could have been where the alleged suspect, Bryan Kohberger, parked his car and scoped out the scene that night of November 12th into November 13th.
Could have been, but not definite.
When the crimes happened. Again, this is the back lot right behind where that house used to sit.
And of course, Vinny, as far as the prosecution and the defense in this case, they have made it clear that they got everything they needed evidence-wise from this house before it was taken down.
Yeah, I still believe it's a mistake. The people who need to go in that house are the people who are going to decide the case, the jury. Now they're going to get pictures. They may get some renderings, but they won't be able to actually walk through it to get a better idea. So I disagree with it, but they're the experts in Idaho. That's the way they do it. When you went up to that top area, to me, it's always been about that area, because from there's the darkness, there's the cover. It's a lot that no one's really going to be going to necessarily, and it's a way to make your way to that house without drawing much attention.
That's exactly right. In fact, it was when you go up the side road to the left of where the property used to sit, there was kind of that drop-off that I talked about. But when you got to the back, it was a much easier slope. If someone were to try to sneak down there, you probably wouldn't break an ankle coming down. And of course, it led right up to those back glass doors. So who knows? That could be a possible entry point where he could have been. We'll have to wait till the details come out in trial, of course.
Right, and I think you were 100% on with the sliding doors. We know that they were dusting them for prints and the windows down there as well. But it's a safe place. Moscow was always a safe place. There was no reason that you would have to lock your doors in Moscow. But now, obviously, you do. All right, Cody.
And in fact, Vinny, there's some students out here. It was pretty bustling. They're moving around. I'm sure it's August, so school's starting back. And like to your point, that it's pretty safe. They're out here throwing frisbee, playing intramural sports. So this is probably a one-off situation here in Moscow.
All right, Cody's going to stay with us. Coming up, how was the accused killer tracked from his apartment?
We're beginning that drive that Bryan Kohberger would have made that night of November 12th, going into the morning of November 13th on the way to Moscow, Idaho.
Hey, Jennifer, check your Discord DM.
Join Court TV's Vinny Politan.
In every story, in every
Heather, check your Discord DM.
trial, every case, there's at least two sides to it.
To dive into the latest
Oh my God.
and breaking true crime stories.
This was a very targeted, very personal attack.
Inside
I've never seen that in Discovery. I've been incarcerated 3 years.
and outside of the courtroom.
She's a psychopath.
Now, let's look at the other side of all of that.
Vinny Politan Investigates. Weeknights, 9/8 Central. Only on Court TV.
Now, as I was making this drive out of Washington State's campus, I did want to stop and point out these cell phone towers. We know a crucial point in this investigation into police locking down Bryan Kohberger as a potential suspect were his cell phone pings in and around Pullman, Washington, and Moscow, Idaho. So these towers right here are more than likely some of the towers they caught some of his pings on as he left and returned to campus here on Washington State University's campus in Pullman, Washington.
One thing about the Idaho student killer, the accused killer, spent a lot of time driving around that area by himself in his car. In fact, I want you to take a look at this. He was stopped by police. This is beforehand for doing some improper driving. Take a listen.
Yeah, there was a little bit of confusion with speeding because someone had stopped. I wasn't sure what they were doing, and then they put on their light to turn.
Mhm.
So I thought that maybe they were letting me go through.
Oh.
Did you see that?
No.
I feel like right before I made the turn, there was someone who made a right. They didn't have their signal on, so I wasn't sure if they were just waiting.
Yeah, so I would just advise just don't enter the intersection until you can go so you don't get stuck.
So him driving around by himself, and that is the theory that investigators and prosecutors have here, which brings me to the next question that I want to take a look at, which is How was Brian Kohlberger, the accused killer, tracked from his apartment? How did that go? Court TV producer Cody Thomas is still with us, and also joining us now, private investigator with over 20 years of experience, criminologist and profiler Jason Jensen. Cody, let me go to you first. You are there, and you were taking a ride, and you noticed some things. What did you find out today?
Well, Vinny, to directly answer that question about how it was tracked, we know it was a combination between those cell phone pings on the surrounding towers and surveillance footage of that white Elantra going to and from his apartment to the crime scene. But I took that drive from his apartment in Pullman here to the crime scene in Moscow, Idaho. Here's a look at what that would have looked like.
So right now, I'm on the Washington State University campus. More specifically, I'm at the complex where Brian Kohlberger lived right here behind me during the time of the Idaho student murders. Now, this is the location from where he drove to the King Road house in Moscow, Idaho, just a few minutes across the Idaho state line. I have the location queued up into GPS. I want to take you guys on the drive, what it would have looked like for Brian Kohlberger to take that night. The GPS says it's only about 18 minutes away, so not too far of a drive. And of course, right now it's just after 8 o'clock here in Pullman, Washington. And we do know that Brian Kohlberger left this location around 2:53 a.m. So of course it would have been much darker, but at least while we still have a little bit of light outside, I want you guys to see what the drive would have looked like for him as we go from here to Idaho, the University of Idaho, to that King Road house location. So right now, we're going to take a little trip. We're beginning that drive that Brian Kohlberger would have made that night of November 12th, going into the morning of November 13th on the way to Moscow, Idaho. Again, we're here in Washington State's campus, leaving Brian Kohlberger's apartment complex. Now, one of the first things I am noticing is that I don't see, or at least readily see, any security cameras that are clearly in sight. But we do know that according to the probable cause
Yes, very correct, David.
affidavit, that at least 5 cameras on WSU's campus and around the campus caught Kohlberger's white Elantra leaving around 2:53 a.m. and coming back after 5 a.m. Of course, we know those murders occurred somewhere in that window of time. Now, as I'm coming up to the exit point of campus, we see a lot of these light posts adjacent to the sidewalk here on my right. Now, what I have noticed is that every single one of those light posts that I've seen has a camera sitting right on top, a security camera. So any one of these, if this was one of the roads he took getting back on campus, could have been one of the cameras that picked him up in that white Elantra. As we've made our way off of campus out to one of the main roads nearby, you can see these huge, massive expanses of land on either side of the road. But what you don't see are streetlights or surveillance cameras out here. So I'd imagine after midnight, it's just after 8 o'clock here, but after midnight, I imagine it to be incredibly dark outside of headlights from your car or a few other cars passing by. And you see there's not too many of them right now, not that busy of a road. I can only imagine it to be less busy, again, after midnight, 2 a.m., 3 a.m., when he was allegedly out heading toward Moscow. So now we've made it to SR 270, State Road 270, the main road connecting Pullman to Moscow, Idaho. A little bit busier. You see traffic intersections, a lot more cars, a lot more businesses on either side. There's a sign, "Welcome to Moscow." And as I'm pulling...
We don't even know, guys, we don't even know if that was the way he took. If he even did it.
Into this intersection, I see several surveillance cameras. More than likely, some of which that picked his car up, that white Hyundai Elantra, the night of the murders. Here we are. We have reached the campus of the University of Idaho. There's the marquee right there out front. So now we are officially on campus, heading toward the King Road house, where the 4 victims lost their lives that night. There's a little lay of the land, some fields here on the right, looks like intramural fields. Some sort of barns of sorts, probably for the agriculture school up towards the right. As we're coming here, I see a few more cars, a little more busy around this area. a lot more street lights as well. They haven't quite turned on yet, but there are plenty of them out here. So I imagine it when it gets extremely dark that it's not, too dark. It's well lit once these street lights cut on. So now we've made our way through the depths of the University of Idaho campus. As you can see, there's a group of students right here in front of me. Very busy out here as school is preparing to start back. But right up here, as we make this left turn onto King Road, up here on the right, I'll slow it down just a little bit, is where the King Road house would have been. You can see it's blocked off right here. This is the drive that Kohberger would have had to take that night to get to this location on November 13th, 2022. We have just wrapped up that drive from Kohberger's apartment in Pullman over here to the University of Idaho in Moscow to the King Road location. Of course, the house still would have been sitting there. The sun has set, and it is still to be determined as to what Bryan Kohberger allegedly did or where he went once he got here. But this is what that drive would have looked like for him leaving that night on November 13th of 2022. Now, of course, Vinny, one thing I did note when I got on campus here in Moscow was that Sigma Chi house where Xana and Ethan were coming from the night of the murders, and it was only about 200 yards away from the King Road house.
Jason Jensen, unique way of tracking the accused killer in this case, a combination of cell phone and video, because that phone is off at some point. So that's how investigators have to piece all this together.
You're absolutely right, Vinny. They had to take a combination because the theory is, or the argument will be, that Bryan Kohberger turned off his cell phone in order to avoid detection and tracking. So, that's a sign of a sophisticated criminal in this type of a murder. So they had to piece together real-time video footage from surveillance cameras, which, clearly indicated that the car was an Elantra, so there's no mistake. And then all the cell phone activity before and after the time of the crime really places Kohberger at different parts throughout southern Moscow, all the way back to Pullman, and before he left, like Cody had indicated. So it seems like a pretty buttoned-up case, in my perspective.
Well, and a couple of things that make this very compelling is the way they're able to get and synchronize some of the video they have when the cell phone is actually on to establish that the phone is in that particular car. And that will be crucial, right? Because if you just have video, it could be anyone. And I think that's what the defense will be relying upon when this goes to trial.
Yes, and that's one of the things that we experienced throughout, the legal process. And you're familiar, Vinny, as a former prosecutor. Defense attorneys like to take things, different pieces of evidence as a snapshot in time and argue against it. But it's the totality of all this evidence that will make or break the case against him.
And finally, Jason, they're going to claim that he is somewhere else. So to do that, they should have some way to prove that, either video or cell phone, just the same way that the prosecution is proving it here.
No, exactly. You would think that there would be a trail taking him from his apartment where Cody was at to the destination, the nature park where he supposedly was looking at the night sky. So we'll see, right?
Absolutely. Jason Jensen, thank you so much. Cody Thomas, great work on the ground in Moscow. I'm Vinny Politan. We will keep looking for answers as the investigation continues. I'm Vinny Politan. As we continue our investigation of the Idaho student murders, I think back to when this story first broke and the thoughts that went through my mind, which I think went through the minds of a lot of parents out there who have sent their children off to college. we worry, but we usually worry about things like grades.
No, I'll get you the
Will they
link
get
to the video,
homesick? Will they make friends? Are people being nice to them? You know, worries that they're real worries, but they're not worst case scenario. And that's what happened at Idaho for 4 families. Here's the story.
4 students were brutally murdered in their home near the University of Idaho. Kaylee, Maddie, Ethan, and Xana taken away so young. And now their accused killer has been charged and is preparing for trial as prosecutors seek the death penalty. It is the case the nation is waiting to see and waiting for justice. But what about the victims' families? How are they dealing with our slow-moving system? We'll find out as Kaylee's mom joins us live as we continue to investigate the Idaho student murders.
Now, the families have shown incredible strength throughout all of this, but each family has their own journey that they're taking. And at one of the memorials that took place, we got to hear from the Gonzalez family, Kaylee's family. I think it touched a lot of people.
Jeff 12, the StreamYard link is for you if you guys want to come up.
To show it to you one more time.
Welcome to Find Mexico Houses, the remodel edition. In this episode, we're going to walk through this.
Maddie has truly been a blessing in our lives. Watching her grow and
Good night, love, Tina. Well, you're welcome, love, Tina. You're always welcome here, love, Tina.
mature and to the amazing woman she becomes is truly priceless in our hearts.
It's amazingly tragic, obviously, but then the story and the case moves into our system of justice. And that brings me to our question, which is, it's a big one. What is justice here? What is justice for the families? Let me bring in our special guests, the mother and father of Kaylee Gonzalez, Steve and Christy Gonzalez are with us, as well as the attorney representing the family, Shannon Gray. Thank you all so much for being here. I know this is never easy, but I think the nation has seen the strength of your family, Christy and Steve. And as you sit here tonight, what is justice for you? What is justice?
That's a hard question that we've thought a lot about. Sometimes I feel that there is no justice. Nothing's going to bring the kids back. And therefore, the only thing that would be justice for me is for this person to be living in agony in the depths of hell.
I know that there's a lot of families who don't actually get somebody that is actually charged for it. So I do feel that we are lucky in that standpoint. And a lot of detectives and investigators put in a lot of hard work, and we're lucky to have that, and we want to be appreciative for that. It's a long, slow process, but we're willing and we're ready to do that. We're ready to, put in the time and the effort and get through this and to show people that this is the way that, we can see justice in action, see the truth being taken in place, and then the right outcome and society gets back to normal.
Shannon, this is a difficult journey, an absolutely difficult journey. That's why I'm so glad that you are there to help this family through this. What is your take so far on how our system of justice is doing in this case?
It's a tough question because, it's a small jurisdiction. I work in a much larger jurisdiction where things move a lot faster. You think things are going to move a certain way and sometimes they don't. So it's been difficult for the family because a lot of times I'll say this is how A, B, and C should happen, and they don't happen that way. I have to explain why it didn't happen and, why it's taken so long or it's taken longer than usual or why, the prosecution or the defense have.
Jeff, you coming up so we can have a chat?
Done things that they've done. But, I'm small compared to what Steve and Christy go through every day. I'm just thankful that they found me, that I can help them and answer any questions I can about them and ease their minds when their minds need to be eased about the criminal justice process and what's going on. I mean, they're always going to be a part of my life and I love them to death. So.
Christy, what are the plans for the trial when it happens?
Well, we'll know more at the end of this month when the change of venue is heard and is decided. We plan on being.
Come on, Jeff, just for 30 minutes.
In there. We want to be there. There's about 10 of us in the family that intend on being there for most of it. Obviously, there's going to be days that we will not be there intentionally for. But we're hoping that it stays in Latah County. So, that's a 2-hour drive for us. The further counties that they're looking at would make it hard. So we would have to relook at things. But we want to be there.
Steve,
we intend to be there.
Steve, as you have been on this journey now, it seems like forever, I'm sure, for you. Do you see any light at the end of the tunnel? Do you see that, hey, at some point, this page will turn?
I think of it as this is a living example of how we get things right again. Latah County did everything. The reason this is so slow and this process is taking so long is because they tried to do everything exactly by the book so that the community could see the justice. They could see it, and it wouldn't have to be taken. Idaho's a large state. It wouldn't have to be taken, 6-7 hours away. So I look at this as a living example of the way we correct things. When things go wrong, when things fall off the rails, like you said, you send your kids off to college, the last thing you should think of is anything other than your kid being a dumb kid and doing something embarrassing to get them on a camera or something that you're going to see at your employer the next day. That's like really bad. And for murder, for death, that's just not, that can't be new normal. That can't be something that we accept as a society. So I think we can be a living example for everyone, how we can course correct and figure this thing out and hold somebody accountable and, show that this is just a one-off that, won't happen and it's not the new norm.
Christy, are there moments where you can have happy memories? Are there moments where you can smile and think about Kaylee?
Oh, absolutely. You can't think about Kaylee and not smile. and we have so many happy memories and so many videos and so many pictures. And I look at them all the time. It's those late nights that get you, and you think of the tragedy that unfolded. And, it's terrorizing, it's traumatizing. But there are happy moments. There are.
Steve, if this gets the conclusion that we're all hoping for, which is the truth comes out and there's a conviction, are you prepared to make an impact statement?
Yeah, I just know my family. I know my kids. They're all strong. They're all intelligent, super smart. Every one of them has already wrote it out. They've already got set in stone. So yeah, we're willing to and just thank the community and thank all the people who've put their lives on pause so that we could have that moment, so we could have the justice, because it doesn't just happen by accident. And we've got people like Shannon in our life. It's amazing what we've been able to see, how people have shown love to our family and reached out to us and flooded us with letters and different things. So yeah, I feel an obligation to all the people that have been with us this whole time. And that's why there's that sense of pressure that, this has got to turn out a certain way. And we're looking forward to seeing that turn out.
And Shannon, do you expect any problems with all the victims that want to speak being able to speak if and when we get to that part of this case?
Yeah, that was an odd occurrence that happened over in the Lori Vallow trial, where the judge was pretty, strict or adamant about following the statute when it came to who could speak and give victims impact statements. Most of the time, the immediate family and those things will be able to speak. The judge may put down, his foot when it comes to grandparents and other things that under the statute currently aren't maybe allowed unless they're serve as a representative for the family. But I'm hoping that the whole anybody gets to speak what they want to. There's a reasoning to it, but I don't see there being any problems in this case. So
that's good to hear. Shannon Gray, thank you so much. Christy and Steve Gonzalez, our thoughts are with you, and that the nation's thoughts are with you, and our best to all of your family. Thank you so much.
Like always, guys, like, comment, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell notification for any new uploads. And this is what it's all about, guys. It's about justice for the victims, not only in the Idaho Ford case, but in the Noah Presley case, in the, I would say, Delphi case, and any other case going on right now. Let's hope and pray that Sebastian Reed does not turn into another Summer Wells case. Y'all have a good Wednesday night and Thursday. This is TCC out.
I never see the lights out. They get me overdrive. Fancy on a fast car. These days I am